And I'm going to give the quick bio here on Shay. So Shay is founder and creative director of Spaulding Brand. Spaulding Brand is an identity design office committed to sharing truth in its simplest visual form. Since 2008, they've helped business leaders build trust through clear brand strategy and memorable, enduring logos and identity programs. Every logo they develop is built on a foundation of clear strategy, meticulous craftsmanship, and an organized process that has been refined over more than 2 decades. They partner with organizations and individuals from startups to long-established entities who value the partnership between design and business. So with that, I'll invite Shay to take over. You're muted right now.
If you turn on screen sharing, that'd be awesome.
Yep, you're all set.
Thank you. All right, can everybody see that okay? Good.
Yeah, we got it.
Yep.
Well, I have to admit, I was wondering if we'd have a smaller group and would have, less reason to feel nervous about sharing a presentation. Actually really glad to be here today. So yes, we're going to talk about brand strategy, but we kind of have an internal rallying cry in the work that we do, and that's tell the truth. So this presentation is going to talk about truth in business and how brand strategy and identity use that truth to benefit business. But to introduce ourselves, graphic design office, as Spencer mentioned, that is specialized in a particular line of graphic design, business identification. We've done that for 14 years now, just had a 14-year anniversary, which was kind of exciting and crazy to think about. We worked with lots of different clients from lots of different industries and sizes and places of where they're at. So we make logos and identity programs that tell the truth. And as we go through this presentation, my hope is that this idea of discovering and harnessing the truth of our organizations is going to be a benefit to everyone here, no matter where you are, whether you're looking for an identity or not, whether you're in the middle of that process. Benefits of this approach and thought pattern should be a strength to you and your company. So identity design is about clearly defining truth in its simplest form. So when a business identity is full of truth, it accomplishes a couple of important things. One, it can live a long time. It's one of the unique parts about identity design. Most graphic design is a short-term piece of communication. Identity design is a long-term piece of identification. And that's a huge benefit to businesses we'll talk about in a minute. It also penetrates the mind and the heart. So it solves 3 common challenges that businesses face today. The first one is getting noticed. It's a tough world to get noticed in. There's a lot going on. There's a big crowd of people to stand out from. When we focus on the truth of our businesses, we find that we're drawn to that, right? Just like we're drawn to people who know who they are and have confidence in who they are. It's the same in business. Authenticity is felt very, very deeply. This was an identity we did for a company that creates golf putters, but these are golf putters that sell for $1,500, $2,000, $3,000. They're made from forged Damascus steel. They have their own forge. They create their own Damascus steel. And so the identity has to communicate luxury, expensive, nice. It has to help transmit this message to people of who they actually are. Number 2, being remembered. That's tough too. A good identity really has to stick in the mind. There's so much going on competing for attention. So it's got to be distinctive. This is for a company actually there in Utah called Odyssey, and they essentially teach new and experienced investors how to properly invest in short-term rentals. So vacation properties. There are a lot of ideas behind this particular symbol, but as you'll see, one side is lifted above the other. That's a very simple way that this stands apart from other symbols of its kind. So distinction is another part of identity design, and that also comes from understanding the truth about the business. The third thing that it helps businesses with is building lasting connections with their customers. And I mentioned this before, but good identity design is something that endures a long time. It becomes symbolic for people. Kind of picture it as like a, if it's simple enough, it's like an empty vessel that over time can contain and hold all of the positive associations, experiences, and meaning and memories that people have with the business. And so over time, and you can see this in the things that, the symbols that you recognize in businesses you appreciate, they grow in meaning and power over time, getting deeper connections with your customers. This was an identity done for a preschool that was preparing to franchise itself. And symbolically, what we learned in all of our research and uncovered as truth for them was that they focus on teaching children to love learning. So Kinder Prep is the name of the company, and the letter K made out of two symbols representing love and learning. So true, distinct, and simple business identity is the result of good process. It's not by chance. So our process contains three parts: clarify, design, and organize. But today we're just going to talk about clarify, which is the process of clarifying brand strategy, the process of uncovering truth and putting it into words. So we look at this as though we're building a strong foundation. We actually talk about ourselves a lot as foundational in our work. We're at the beginning of the process, but on which everything else is built, not just the logo, but this also affects the way you answer the phone, and it affects the way you treat people, and affects culture of your company, decisions you make on new products to roll out. Understanding the truth about your business is truly a foundation for you. So we approach this as 4 cornerstones of this foundation: vision, differentiation, personality, and values. Now, there are a lot of ways that you can approach this. This is how we do it. Business strategy typically focuses on strategic actions that help businesses, operate, remain competitive and profitable. Whereas brand strategy is a framework for internal and external behavior that guides stakeholders. So, definitely we are informed by a brand strategy in the work that we do. But every stakeholder of the company is affected also by that same truth if it's properly clarified. So it's a super difficult process to do for yourself. And there are lots of ways to do it, as I mentioned. I was telling our breakout group that the most difficult identity that I've ever worked on is our own. It's just tough. It's hard to answer these questions yourself, but hopefully this framework today helps just a little bit if you're working on that. Here's our approach to it. First thing we do is a discovery research phase. And that includes questionnaires, phone interviews, online research, and we really just focus on being a sponge. We try to gather as much information as we possibly can. Second step is to vet our understanding, make sure we got it right. So we gather everything together. We analyze and organize it all under those 4 cornerstones. And then we meet and discuss with the clients. Very much a work meeting. I expect to be wrong a lot of times in my understanding, but the goal is to uncover the truth with them. And finally, articulating that truth into a strategy, we craft the cornerstones, we write them very carefully. We meet and present them, we revise them, and we ultimately don't stop until everybody's on board with that. We found that it doesn't matter how good a design team we are, if everybody's not on board with this foundational truth of their company, we will continue to struggle to align on what the identity is supposed to accomplish. So I'd like to just close with a brief case study about one of our clients in North Carolina called Targan. They had recently changed their name from a really long name that I can't even remember, as they were getting ready to obtain additional funding. And they had just completed the patent for a machine they had built in the biosciences arena. And essentially what they do is they immunize animals that will be eaten at some point. So chickens, pigs, and fish primarily. And so the idea there is if those animals are healthy when they're young, they'll grow up to be healthy when they're old, and we can feed more people. And so they've really taken a lead on the technology behind that process of being more targeted. So Targan, I think, is the name they came up with target and animal. This was the logo that they had just completed when they came to us, and their board would not approve it. People were uncomfortable with it. They didn't really know how to articulate why they were uncomfortable with it. And they asked if we could just fix it, somehow make it work better so that everybody feels good about it. But as I mentioned, we really don't ever approach design until we have gone through this process of clarifying strategy or truth. And in this case, it was very beneficial for them. So we went through the same process of discovery and gathering the information, getting our understanding, and articulating brand identity, brand strategy, excuse me. And for them, their vision was surprising to them. It came out of all of the discussions I had with them that this was what their vision ended up being. We help feed the world by improving animal health. And the CEO originally said, we can't say that. That's too proud, too prideful to say we help feed the world. But really the point of a vision statement is that it's ambitious and it's inspiring, and it gives people a reason to come to work. And so that's really what they do, though, by taking care of these animals, is helping to feed the world. Their differentiation, that they're the biodevice systems leader in advanced targeting technologies. They are the only ones doing that kind of work. And as they continue to be the only ones doing that kind of work, even if people jump in, they will stay ahead. That differentiation pushes them to continue as the leader in these computer-driven, AI-driven technologies. Their personality, we think big, we do good, we feel driven. This was also coming from everything that came from their team as we interviewed people, and has driven the culture of their company significantly. And finally, their values: trust, transformation, precision, and experience, and doing good. So I did not put a slide in to reiterate this, but I'll go back to it. Looking at this, we don't get those key things about their business coming through. And thanks, and I'm just looking at time, I apologize. Am I behind or ahead? I didn't even start my timer.
No, you're about right on. Typically, we wrap up the presentations around 11:30, and that gives us 10 or so, 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A.
Awesome, perfect. Okay, so having gone through this process with them, we developed a symbol for them that was much more appropriate to who they are. Symbolically, there are a lot of different components to this. Certainly a plus symbol representing health, whereas the previous symbol with the crosshairs felt more like hunting and animal abuse than it did health for the animals. We also get a letter T for Targan. We get an idea of people as they're the ones who are benefited by what Targan does. And overall, it certainly is at a higher level of communication for them as they go to get more funding. I think the values are very well represented. There's a higher level of trust. The idea of transformation is represented here, precision. And it is also a crosshairs or targeting system. It's just not a hunting related targeting system. All of those kinds of design decisions were very much fed by this process of identifying the truth of their organization, articulating it very, very carefully, agreeing upon it together, and letting that drive the work that we do in identity development. And if you go to their website, which I think is targan.com, although I can't remember, if you search Targan, you find it. They have peppered their site with this brand strategy, which typically is an internal guiding tool, but they've really adopted so thoroughly that it's become a major part of their culture. And some of their folks even have said, this is so thrilling because it's given me purpose in my work, right? I love to get out of bed and go to work because I'm helping feed the world, right? By doing this kind of stuff. I'm very proud of it. So that is the presentation. Anybody cares to learn more, you're more than welcome to reach out to me anytime. LinkedIn's a great way to connect with me. Email's wonderful. I'm happy to set up a call and discuss any of this with you if you're interested. Our website has a lot of good information about our process and how we do this. But Spencer, that is all I have prepared, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Shay. That's awesome. So I took a few notes as you were going through. I really liked the emphasis on narrowing in on the truth of the company and telling the story. I think also one of the things you mentioned that stuck out to me was that the brand, in some cases, outlives the company, and people remember the brand, the imaging, the jingle, the messaging, even if they don't remember the name of the company sometimes, which was an interesting reminder. So I'll open it up here for questions. I know there were a couple people, so let's open it up here. And if you ask a question, if you feel comfortable, turn your video on so we can see you.
Let's see. I'm going. Does anybody want me to leave this screen up, or should I close it and make it just do that?
You could pull it down. Yeah.
Shay, I had a question. And this is pretty specific to what we're working with. So anyway, let me know if the question makes sense. But at Summit Venture Studio, our goal is to kind of create projects that within a year or 2 or 3 years are hopefully getting acquired by a bigger company in the space. So like right now I'm working on an ed tech product. It's a couple of online trainings for teachers. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering how far down the path of like a brand strategy, like we do have a logo, but how far down the path should I worry about brand strategy when the goal is to get acquired by someone? Like if Canvas were to buy our trainings, I'm sure they would try to rebrand it. Is that usually the case when you get acquired? Those products get rebranded in a way.
Can be. Yeah, it certainly can be. Companies typically want to try to bring it into whatever advantageous umbrella that they can for themselves. Mm-hmm. If I'm understanding right, the question maybe is it still valuable to do this kind of work for those kinds of companies, right? That are more short term. And I would say that, I'd ask the question, what's the reason that they want to purchase your company? I think that they are going to be drawn to your company for the same reason that you're drawn to companies, because that company, not only to them is that valuable that they know themselves, but they know that it means something to the people that are purchasing from that company. And that's why they're going to buy your product, right? So I think the more clear you can get, the better. And frankly, a smart company is going to keep all of the equity that they can, in what that is driving that company, what's made that company attractive to buyers. And I'm talking like customer buyers, right? And maybe they might change the identity a little bit, but they may not. I think that it's wise for every company to drill down to this as soon as they can, because these things are what really bring their business to the forefront of people's minds.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Good question, Parker.
I have a question for you, Shay.
Yeah.
I was intrigued by the comment about trying to salvage a logo concept versus starting from the beginning and doing all the research. have you ever had an experience where you actually were able to make a subtle tweak or a fix to an existing brand or logo that made all the difference and made a positive impact rather than starting over?
Yeah, it's a really great question. If the identity is already aligned with the truth of the organization and you just need to make it visually more effective, because there are different components to an identity being right. There's, like I said, today was really just the focus on clarifying the truth behind it, but that, the design phase and so forth, those are, there's a lot of design fixes that can be made to an identity for it to function better. So one example was a knife company who makes really, really nice custom knives. They had already created a monogram that wasn't bad, and it fit their brand, but it could not reduce small enough on the knife blade. Like it could not be etched into the knife blade because the shapes were not correct. They were too compressed and pieces of it were being lost in the etching process. So in that case, we went in and we just retooled it so that it functioned better, because logos have to do a lot of good functional work as well as conceptual work. And so that would be one example. But like in this case of Target, they really didn't understand what they were trying to communicate or who they were. And so that didn't work very well. But sure, there have been lots of examples where people have come with their foundation set well enough that design could come in and make it a better product.
That's a great point. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a good question. Happens. Yeah, but in most cases, just to add to that, most cases it's the client really doesn't have any idea who they are. I mean, they know what they do, they know their business really well. It's not that, but they haven't really gone through this kind of a process. And so a lot of times those identities are just, they're not really built on anything that's going to mean anything to people.
Shay, can you talk more about the pre-work and maybe homework that you assign or provide a client to help them prep for an engagement with you?
Yeah, for sure. So this questionnaire that I mentioned, and are you talking like we're ready to start the project? This is the pre-work to the discovery phase or the clarify phase?
I mean, your comment about most times the client, they know what they do, they know who their customer is, but that's all.
Yeah, we put together a 17-ish questionnaire, and the questions you have to really think hard about them. Like it forces you to write down what you actually think about, why your business exists, who you compete with, who your stakeholders are, how you prioritize those stakeholders in order of importance, what message you want each stakeholder to receive about you, where you want to be in 5 or 10 years, how you would articulate that, what makes you different. I mean, it's a lot of questions that we send out to them to give them time to get all of that done. And then interestingly, when everybody sends back their answers, even different executives who work together all the time, folks in other parts of the business, they don't always line up. And it's pretty revealing at that stage that there are some inconsistencies. But that questionnaire is very helpful. And then the phone interviews are very much based on the questionnaire. I dive deeper into areas that raise questions for me or seem to be of value from the questionnaire in the phone interviews. And then, like I say, we just regather all of that together from everybody's responses, put it in a document that's essentially a research summary where all questions have everybody's answers below them. And then that's provided to the team. And I extrapolate from that information about these 4 areas and look at it from this vision, differentiation, personality, and values and say, what's floating to the surface? What's consistent among everybody? What questions are there? And that's really what we sit down and vet together is, hey guys, I've gone through all of your stuff. And most of the time they're like, wow, this is really insightful because, we just don't talk about it. We don't really know how to frame that. But I would say our pre-work is primarily this questionnaire and the phone interview work that pulls it out of them.
Thank you for that. Parker threw in another question, but if anyone else has a question, you can put yours before Parker's.
Thanks, Spencer.
Well, I guess my question is, how much pushback have you got? You said most of the time. I'm always curious about when it doesn't work. When did you get somebody who just dug their heels in and were you able to change their mind?
Yeah, it does happen, Harley. This Target company I mentioned, the CEO had a response to that. That was pretty consistently throughout the whole process. And there was one point at which the CEO was uncomfortable with some things that we were proposing to them. And the rest of his team said, respectfully, this is right. And he said, okay, you guys decide. And then he came back later and said, well, the entire company loves it and feels super excited about it. And the more I've thought about it, the more I love it. So I get some of those kinds of things that are challenging. Another client also, we would get to different phases in the project, and you come back with ideas and thoughts, and you write up all of these things, and I'm missing something, like something that I didn't get out of it. And so we try to make those phases very work meeting-esque, like, hey, no, it's open. You talked about it. Tell me what you think. Where are we missing? And if we really just don't come eye to eye, I go back to what's our objective. I try to keep it there. And part of the reason for doing this brand strategy thing is so that throughout the process, we can go back to that. Everybody's on the same page. Like, no, these are the reasons that we explored this, because we're trying to get this message across. But yeah, it certainly happens, Harley. I try to be really a good listener and respectful. And I also try to be really honest with my clients. They hire us to help them see things they can't see. So, a great question.
Okay.
It happens. Most of the time,
Yep.
we get through it this way. Yeah.
Thanks, Harley. Shay, so you mentioned engaging with a client who was uncomfortable with We Feed the World. So Parker's question here, advice on how to draw the line, or where the line is between being inspirational and bold in your mission statement versus overinflating or exaggerating. Maybe you could apply this to the case of a startup that is still getting going.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question, really good question. I will say that, again, we're trying to find truth, right? And you should not overinflate truth. It's not, you got to be honest. If we made a claim that wasn't true or honest, that it's not going to fly. It's not going to work. And so we're really hunting for that. But when you do find that, if you can package that up in a way that inspires and excites people to do their jobs, or look you up, or get on a call, or work with you as a vendor or whatever, that's the right thing to do, because we've got to share that truth, or it doesn't do any good either, right? We've got to tell the truth. And so I think that the line is drawn there in saying, I'm going to be really honest about what is actually happening here. But I've got to tell you, every time that I do this process with a company, I go, these guys are awesome. There is something special here. And this process sort of pulls out what's special. And I think that the line there is like, just be sure that you're telling the truth, but make it shine like it's supposed to. And if it's not inspirational, it's not really doing its job. Now, it needs to be practical too, but particularly this vision statement, it really does need to open your eyes to what are you really about beyond making money? Like, why are you doing this? And if that doesn't inspire in some way, then I really don't know that you could build a lot off of that. You know what I mean? But yeah, we're very careful not to pick something up that isn't accurate or it shouldn't be said.
That's really helpful.
Okay. Thanks, Parker. Thanks, Shay. So I have one more question, but I'll reserve it if anyone else has their last minute question, and we're going to wrap up. Okay, so my question is, whether you saw or how you saw companies adjust messaging during COVID and kind of this, there's been a major shift in work habits and buying patterns, and everything has changed in the last couple of years. How has your work changed? How have your customers adjusted to this new norm?
I think everyone has, in my opinion, has gotten more vulnerable and more honest. And we've been able to have these kinds of conversations more easily since that's happened. I think companies are finding that if we're not authentic and real about who we are and what we are, we're not going to be successful in getting people to come and talk to us. So that I think is the biggest thing. People just became much more concerned about being authentic and real. A lot of people had to change the way they did things too. So there was a lot of new innovation, things that had to be communicated better. So for us, it was good. A lot of times I'll tell people that, logo and identity design is not about communication. It's about identification. It's different. Our job is to identify. It's to, help people to recognize, between 2 or 3 different, hundreds of different, whatever, right? Be recognized in a busy, crowded, remembered. But still, I'll use the word communication. You've got a lot of new things to communicate when people are doing things in a new way, right? So your identity becomes even more important to stand for something important. So stand for something good.
Thanks, Shay, so much for coming and presenting today. Thanks everyone for the questions and joining in. Have
You're
a
welcome.
very happy
Yeah, thank you,
Thanksgiving.
guys. Have a great one. It's good to meet everybody, and thanks so much.
Thanks, Shay. Appreciate it.
Welcome.